Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Slip Safety Show. I'm Christian Harris and I'm the founder of Slip Safety Services. My guest on this episode is, I hope you won't mind me saying so, an industry veteran of the cleaning sector, Barrie Torbett. Barrie I've known for a number of years, and he's done all sorts of roles within the industry as well as in a livery company, which we will talk about during our conversation as well. So he brings a lot to the table in terms of expertise, experience and insights. We have a really interesting conversation which is quite wide-ranging. We talk about topics such as the importance of cleaning and hygiene and the cleaning sector and how that has been increased and magnified since the outbreak of the coronavirus crisis. We talk about the differences between cleaning and disinfection. We talk about the, as Barrie calls it, the adult conversations that need to be had between cleaning contractors and prospective clients around expectations and budgets. So trying to get away from setting a bronze budget but expecting a gold standard. And Barrie's also got some thoughts about how, if you're a client and looking to outsource your cleaning or to choose a cleaning contractor, you should go about that as well. So there's lots of value here. I will say and apologise that there are some slight audio challenges with this, but I honestly think that the value of the content will outweigh any slight issues with the audio. So stick with it and I think you'll be rewarded. Let's get on with it then, and my conversation with Barrie Torbett. Barrie Torbett, welcome to the Slip Safety Show.
Thank you.
It's nice. Yes, nice to catch up with you virtually. Haven't seen you for a while face to face, so it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been the same for a lot of people just recently.
Yeah, I know. Crazy times. Yeah. So, do you want to give the people watching or listening a quick overview of kind of who you are and what you do? I know there's a lot to touch on there, but perhaps what do you do now, and then we can get in a bit about your background as we get into things.
Okay. I suppose currently I'm supposedly semi-retired, but within the cleaning industry you never quite retire. So currently I spend my time mentoring, investing in some small companies that are involved in the cleaning industry and associated industries. One of them in particular is involved in fire compliance, air and fire compliance in the catering side, so kitchen. But I've always, my background is effectively over 50 years now in the cleaning industry, apart from 1 year I spent, 18 months I spent working for Kimberly-Clark with the cleaning people. So technically I was still involved in the toilets and cleaning up because it was the industrial division. But other than that, I've been involved in what you call mainstream contract cleaning, latterly involved very much in the aviation sector, so airport cleaning, which of course covered a multitude of activities. And eventually sold the business to a large company from Holland, Barries International, so most people might know. And sort of retired for a while, but you can only play so much golf and holidaying. So a couple of phone calls asked me to look at various projects. So I got involved in acting as a consultant effectively. Again, predominantly in the aviation sector for a while. But I've helped get a couple of small cleaning companies going with advice and support. So I am actually involved in the air and fire company. It was one of those where I liked it so much I bought a piece of it, you might say. So that takes up a reasonable amount of time. On a kind of social front, call it a social front, it's probably not quite right. I've been involved in the delivery companies of the city since 1994. And a lot of people may not know that the cleaning industry actually has its own livery company. It's called the Worshipful Company of Environmental Cleaning. Got nothing to do with worshipping as such. It's just the history of the liveries. We're all called Worshipful.
They're all called that, aren't they? Yeah.
We there is a story behind the environmental bit, which of course makes it very relevant now. But basically, there is a worship company, a launderers, and they complained about us being the worship company of cleaners. So
Okay.
back 40 odd years ago, we entered the word environmental into it before it became very sexy, so to speak.
Yeah.
But so I've been master of that twice now. I've literally just finished the second term as being master. Those that don't know, the livery companies, they have a bit of a reputation of being an old gentleman's wining and dining club, but there's so much more to it than that. We're very involved with charitable works and educational works. And in fact, the environmental cleaners, we're getting very close now to setting up the register of practitioners.
Okay.
That'll be one of the first formal. We can't become a chartered institute for various reasons, but it does mean we can give people what will be recognised as professional qualification and professional recognition in the industry. So watch out for that. There'll be more of that coming along the line. So
that's very useful.
Yeah. So I'm still very much involved on a day-to-day basis in the industry, and a lot of it is actually giving advice and mentoring people, and particularly during this current crisis. Obviously, there's been lots of different things going on.
Yeah.
So I still enjoy it. It's a fantastic industry. There's some wonderful people in it. So it's nice to still be able to make a contribution.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I was keen to get you on because of your experience and your network within the industry and the role obviously within the livery company. By the way, have you ever done the pancake race, the livery company's pancake race?
I did. Yeah, my first time. It's something that the masters of the company do. It's very competitive.
Yeah.
Amazingly competitive. It's done in the square. Yeah, I didn't do very well that year, I have to say. My excuse was I was suffering from arthritic hips, but that's another thing.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it still goes on today. It goes on every year. One thing, it usually within the livery companies, if something happens once, it becomes a tradition. Yeah.
One of my investors, he put me onto that a couple of years ago. I'd never heard of it before. He was involved in the I think it was the poultry. I think it's the poulters, maybe is the word.
Poulters.
Yeah, and I think he was actually involved in setting that whole pancake race up.
The poulters were the originators. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was involved in that. So we went last year. We had a board meeting on the same day. We arranged it. We went to watch the races, and then we went to the lunch in the livery hall, which was nice.
Right. Yeah.
So
most things that go on that generally are followed by lunch. It just seems that again, that's another tradition. Perhaps that's where it gets its image from. But as I say, that even the pancake race, it all raises funds for charity.
Yeah, absolutely,
and that covers a multitude of different charities. I mean, for instance, most of the liveries have actually contributed, made donations to the NHS and all these other good causes.
Yeah.
And throughout the year, there's various initiatives that we all contribute towards. The livery companies actually contribute something like £70 million a year to charity across 110 companies. So it's a significant achievement.
Yeah, that's good, really good. So you touched on the whole coronavirus crisis, and how do you feel that the industry has dealt with that? Firstly, in terms of the response that we've seen from everybody.
I think they should all be commended. I mean, without not being kind to the NHS or all the other frontline carers, they are all doing an absolutely fantastic job.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's whilst it's a different issue they're dealing with, it's something they are used to dealing with to a certain extent.
Good point.
And the cleaning industry is very, very similar, but it's done very much on the back. We're pushed to the back of the queue, so to speak. But whenever there's an issue, the cleaning companies actually become very multi-skilled and multi-talented. In my own background in the airport sectors, if you go back to the 7/11 bombings and the foot and mouth disease, crisis going back over the years. Suddenly, the cleaning industry goes into the front line, all very kind of low key, but they're making sure that everyone's safe, even where the bombings are concerned. Things like checking the waste bins. Most places don't have waste bins anymore because of those kind of crises. But the cleaning operative, blue collar, low skilled, low paid, is asked to check the bins every half an hour. So suddenly they're becoming a security guard, and I think that's what the industry's done with COVID. It's actually stepped up and just got a little bit more recognition for what they're doing. Yeah. But it's become also identified as a much more skilled environment.
Yeah.
The decontamination cleaning that's going on, and of course lots of different companies have sprung up out of the woodwork, so to speak, offering sanitizing, and of course there's various levels of what that's doing.
I think that's an important point.
Yeah, if you're going to do the thing about the cleaning industry overall for many years is that if you're going to do something, you might as well do it right.
Yeah,
and do it correctly. That has to be recognised in terms of revenue and pay, etc.
Of course, yeah.
But if you're going to go in and make an effort to do something, you might as well do it properly, rather than just skim over or use a product that in the old days we used to buy lots of disinfectant and bleach.
Yeah.
It basically smelt of disinfectant and it smelt of bleach. It didn't actually do very much.
No.
And that's where, but the nature of the industry was always, well, it's cheap, and the cleaners will just use a lot of it anyway. So why buy a brand that actually does something? So I think it's important that we stay professional in this right at this moment in time, and make sure that what we're doing is actually achieving what it's supposed to do and keeping people safe.
Yeah.
But that rolls out, beyond this current crisis. You think about, I think what people realise now is how quickly these kind of infections can spread. And, quite simple things that we do all day, like touch your nose, touch your eyes, touch your mouth. That's how this thing has really escalated.
Yeah.
Yes, some of it's a little bit airborne, hence the 2 meters, but it's not totally airborne. So it's not as though we're all breathing it in all the time. And I learned something about 4 or 5 years ago. I went for one of my clients. I went to India to look at. So I was in 5 different cities in about 10 days. Never been to India before. But
culture
we were
shock.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about the them and us of the situations, But that's just something that they're used to there. But a very good friend of mine said to me, before you get on the plane, go to Boots and buy some good quality hand sanitizer and just keep it in your pocket all the time. And so I obviously said to him, why was that? He said, because most people get bad gastric problems and upset stomachs and bugs purely simply on their hands and touching their mouth and eyes, and you don't realise how often you do it. So I did that, and probably every half an hour I was actually sanitising my hands. And one of my colleagues that was with me said, why do you keep doing that? So I explained it to him, and he said, well, I'll try that. For him, it was the first time he'd been to India a lot. It was the first time he went to India and didn't have a problem.
Yeah.
And so that was quite a big learning curve. So the moment that this started, fortunately, we had some stock here. So I just started, because the delivery part of the city didn't really stop until about the 14th, 15th, I think my last meeting there, 14th or 15th of March. So a lot of people there were just all carrying the hand sanitizer around.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something that probably will happen going forward. So when it comes into the office environment, hot desks will always be popular, but now I think people will be much more conscious of multi-user keyboards and just basic the coffee stations and things like that. They're all going to need to be maintained in a different way.
Yeah.
And the people are going to have to react differently.
Yeah.
They're going to have to take a level of responsibility for themselves. So a bit like, my grandchildren, if they're not feeling very well, the school says, you mind keeping them away for a few days?
Yeah.
Because that's how quickly it spreads. So I think that cleaning and hygiene is going to actually go up the ladder in terms of this. So when they're doing the risk assessment about what can affect their business, I think that particular part's going to play a much more important role.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I do a lot, as you know, in the kind of insurance and risk management world, and reputation is, you know, really high up on those people's lists. And actually, cleaning and hygiene now, it might not replace that, but actually it's going to become basically reputation 1A, isn't it? Because if you don't achieve the right standards of cleanliness and safety, then people are going to think, well, they don't care about me, or I'm not safe here, and therefore that's going to massively harm your reputation. Or if you get an outbreak, obviously that's going to do the same. So I think, you know, it is going to be strategically much more important now, which is great, because I think historically, you know, cleanliness has been valued, at least ostensibly, but cleaning has been undervalued, and therefore clients have been wanting to pay, you know, a bronze price but expecting a gold standard, which isn't fair.
I agree, and I think people don't appreciate that. The easiest thing to show how important cleaning is to take all your cleaners off the floor for a day or a few hours if it's a high footfall environment. If you imagine your local shopping centre, you know, where people wander around and just assume it stays clean that way all on its own. But if you actually took those operatives off the floor for 3 or 4 hours, particularly in the washroom areas, where people just do not understand how bad the public are in not deliberately abusing, but just the way that they go about things. You know, we did this in the airport environment a few times, because obviously you've got thousands of people an hour going through these buildings, and just take the cleaners away from the washrooms for an hour and just see what happens. It's actually frightening. It's absolutely frightening.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's right that people need to invest in the level of activity and recognise what they need to be delivered in order to maintain their premises. And if it's public facing, so the restaurant trade, the hotels, you mentioned sports and leisure centres, people are going to want to go in these places knowing they're safe. Yeah. That sounds a little bit exaggerated and extreme, but if it wasn't important, why aren't they open now? So it's how they actually come back, and whether most restaurants and places have got this food safety 5 stars type thing, which is great. It says their kitchen is clean, and they maintain good practice. But what about the rest of it? You know, how do we actually get people to have the trust that the tables they're sitting at have been cleaned properly, and that the washrooms are, you know, they might look clean, but are they clean?
No, it's
so that kind of monitoring.
It's a very good point, and I don't think you're overstating it at all. I think in terms of how important this is going to be, because I just think that you know, when we start reopening buildings, however that's going to work, if members of the public or members of staff are walking in and they see that the building isn't clean, and they therefore are going to think, well, what was this company doing for the last 2 or 3 months whilst it was on lockdown? Do they care about me? Because they don't seem to value my safety through achieving hygiene, and therefore, you know, I'm off, or I'm not coming back, or I'm going to change jobs, or whatever it might be. So I think it is really, really critical.
And it's a question of, obviously, at the moment, a lot of places would have been sanitised in various methods whilst they've been empty, and obviously the virus only lasts for a certain amount of hours live anyway. So you could say, if my building's been shut for a month, anything that was there is now gone, it's dead.
Yeah.
But surely it's worth that comfort factor that just pre-reopening, you get something that's treated, that's going to be sustainable as well. There's a lot of products that they will kill whatever's there now, but the moment somebody comes in and uses that desk, uses that table in a restaurant, uses whatever, if they bring anything in with them, you know, we're focusing on the COVID-19, but it could be any kind of gastric illness or whatever. If they come in, the moment they're touching those surfaces, they're back live again. So I think it's important to choose a product, or choose products that are have a shelf, not a shelf life, have a
residual
life. yeah, residual activity, so that it's protecting the surface. I mean, there's one out there at the moment, called Z19, I think, from Zuno, and that's been tried and tested to have an active life for up to 28, 30 days. Yeah. And that's been trialled, and that's being used quite extensively by some of the rail networks now.
Yeah.
So I think it's important when you make that selection, whatever it is, whether we're talking about cleaning materials, machinery, make sure that it's right and fit for purpose and it's doing the job, not just window dressing.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, they're always cleaning this place, but you know, is there actually any detergent in that machine? Is you know, yeah. what is it they're spraying? Or is it just spraying water and using a cloth and moving stuff around? So I think, you know, the credibility of the industry is to make sure you're delivering what you should be delivering. And then, you know, so I'm going off a tangent a bit here, but that then brings all the training into play. Yeah. And that's something that, you know, we perhaps pay a lot of lip service to at times in the industry. Oh yeah, all our staff are trained. And they're all, you know, what is that training? You know, it needs to be measured and make sure that they're delivering it properly and they understand what they're doing. Yeah. So I think now is a great opportunity for the cleaning industry specifically to actually come out of this whole situation and say, look, listen guys, this is what we've done. This is what we've been doing for the last 2-3 months. And this is what we suggest you do going forward now. Yeah. But there is a cost. Involved. And I like to use the phrase about having an adult conversation. You know, sit down, have a genuine adult conversation. The client says, "This is what I want. This is what I need." The contractor needs to say, "Well, this is what that costs." Yeah. You know, and it's you know, somewhere there's some give and take, but there has to be a real commitment to that. And so you do get, you know, we move away from the Rolls-Royce and Mini scenario. Where, you know, everyone has a perception of what they want, but they're not prepared to pay for it. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's spot on. And that should be reflected down to the staff as well. I mean, we're getting there with staff pay, but a situation like we've just gone through, or going through, not gone through, actually say the cleaners are up there. These frontline staff, they're up there doing a very, very important job. Yeah. And that needs to be recognised. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think there's all sorts of drivers historically as to why the industry is what it is. I mean, one of them being obviously the sheer level of competition, because if you put a contract out to tender, someone will always come in slightly cheaper, but that just erodes standards over time, doesn't it? And I think there's a big thing as well about margin. So, you know, we had the whole Compass failure, we had the Interserve issue, and working on such thin margins as well is not really sustainable. So I think, you know, we need to be paying the staff more. We need to be investing more overall, but also the contractors, you know, deserve to be making more margin than, you know, 2 or 3%. That's not the way to create a healthy business, is it? Yeah, it's not a hobby. You know, that's the reality of it. It's not a hobby, and if you're going to be able to maintain standard and be sustainable and deliver consistently, then you've got to be able to reinvest in your business. So there has to be a margin there. I mean, I mentioned right at the outset, I've been around this industry for over 50 years. I can remember when we used to make good margins. Yeah. But obviously that can't go on forever. But there has to be a realistic margin that we can all work to. Yeah. And it's a little bit like, it's the reverse of the Coleman's mustard situation. You know, everyone always says Coleman's make their money on what you leave on the plate. Our industry historically has made its money about what it doesn't put on the plate in the first place. And so we really need to actually get away from that and stand up and be professional about the way we deliver it, but be a little bit more forceful as an industry with the client. Yeah. You know, the clients, unfortunately, will always turn around and say, well, I'll get somebody else to do it. And they will. Yeah. But they're just going out the frying pan into the fire. Why not deal with a contractor you trust? Yeah. Have a sensible conversation and cut your cloth accordingly. Yeah. I think that's important, and that's something that we have to do as an industry. We can't force the clients to do it, but if we kind of get a bit of alignment there's more chance that we'll actually get that delivered. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing where your training and other accreditations kind of help, because if you can say, well, look, here's the industry standard,
of training. Here's the industry standard of what good looks like, or whatever it might be. And actually, we're going to sign up to this. Yes, of course, there'll always be alternatives, but it's going to be more difficult for clients to not go down the route of the best practices, isn't it? Particularly, again, when it comes to it's the health of their staff and their customers on the line, and they're the ones that are actually going to get the repercussions of it, not the cleaning contractors.
Yeah, it's actually quite important that the client does understand what you touched on it there. You are responsible for your clients, whether it's a hotel, or a restaurant, a gym, or just your employees. You are legally obliged to give them a safe working environment. And that rolls out not just about the cleaning, it's the way the buildings are maintained. It's as you mentioned earlier, you talk about risk assessments with the insurers. The air and fire business that I'm involved in primarily started out being about checking compliance of kitchen extract systems. There are regulations about frequency of cleaning extract systems, etc. It's staggering how many people don't follow that. So we do a lot of work with some very credible organisations to ensure that they are being maintained. So we kind of sit between the cleaning contractors. It's almost poacher come gamekeeper here for a moment. We sit between the cleaning contractors and the client and the insurance companies. So the client says, we have our system clean. The cleaning contractor says, yeah, we've cleaned the system. So we actually make sure the dots are joined up. So yeah, you're paying for it, you're getting it. So the insurer can then look at those people and say, they're a good risk. They're not taking liberties. So I wear a multitude of hats to that extent, but it all comes back to cleaning and safety, if you like, making sure that it's being done correctly. Interesting sector, very interesting sector.
Yeah, it is. One of the things you touched on earlier was going to be a question I wanted to ask, which was around kind of innovation. And it's all about, every time you pick up an industry magazine, it's all about this innovation and that innovation. But actually, I wonder sometimes whether that's a bit of a red herring, because actually we should be focusing on the fundamentals of, well, let's just get the right amount of hours in, and let's just get the right amount of materials in, and let's just do the job properly first before we look to try and over innovate and over engineer. What do you think about
that? I think you're right. And again, it comes to the client's understanding of what, to start with anyway, client's understanding of what they think they need. So many people, particularly in certain sectors, are numbers driven, and they say, we've always had 30 cleaners on this job, therefore we expect to see 30 cleaners on this job. And when contracts have been in place for some time, it just becomes the norm. So people stop looking to see, how could we do this better? How can we do this smarter? So when we come back to this balancing the books in terms of what the client can be prepared to pay and what the contractor can deliver, that's the time when we should be looking at what I class as innovation. Innovation isn't changing the colours on a new scrubber dryer and calling it the latest model. Because effectively, I'm slightly cynical about some of these sectors, because they're all made up of pumps and pulleys and drive chains and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot more electronics involved nowadays. But at the end of the day, changing the colours doesn't make it a new innovation. What it actually, when it introduces things where it's doing it better, quicker, safer, and more economical, and they can be proven, then that's what I think about in terms of innovation. So when we come back to talking with clients about, well, we need to work within a budget, then you're going to have to allow us to reduce our headcounts. But we're going to compensate that by bringing in new pieces of equipment. Robotics is starting to make more of a headway in the industry, but it's upfront capital cost, makes people back away from it. But if you're there for a long-term investment, so again, that relationship with the client says, look, we're going to give you a 5-year contract, and we're going to work with you for the next 5 years. Bring that innovation in, bring that equipment in, and it will pay for itself over that period. So that, for me, that's where innovation, it makes a difference. Is when you're looking at how can we do the job better, probably with less staff, but certainly just greater efficiency.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity now to look at what's important in cleaning and what's not important in cleaning. You know, so we come back to the touch points. You know, more attention needs to be paid to those, making sure that your surfaces are clean. So I think sanitising of buildings in terms of the fogging, etc. I think particularly in terms of hygiene areas, that's going to become part of a planned preventative maintenance rather than reactive.
Yeah.
On the back end of this, and people are going to refocus about what's important in their building and what they should invest in it, rather than just say it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think lots of the time, kind of innovation is just used as an excuse to cut costs, basically, isn't it? Because or cut headcount, and actually, you know, with everything that's going to be needed in the new world, I don't think clients can get away with doing that. But I think innovation could be used to say, well, we've currently got 10 staff, let's say, we can invest in this kit, and this will mean we can speed up work here, there, and everywhere, and that means that we've got. So all of a sudden we only need 8 staff, but then we can redeploy the 2 staff to do the touch point cleaning or whatever it might be.
Yeah, either redeploy or you know, improve the wages of the staff that you're retaining to encourage them to be more productive.
Yeah.
I mean, the trouble is, in our industry, we quite often go back to the staff and we tell them what they've got to do, what they've got to change. We don't often tell them why they've got to change. We're going to do it this way now because it's easier and it's better for you. You know, there's still too much of this. You know, we're going to change the area around. We're going to give you a different cleaning material. We're going to do that. We're going to do that, and they just expect the staff to accept it. And of course, the staff say, "Oh, this is just another way of cutting costs." But if you actually explain to everybody why you're restructuring the building in the way they are, I think they'll buy into it more, and they'll understand that you are trying to, you know, deliver a professional service, rather than just, as you say, hacking the numbers back.
Which doesn't get you anywhere in the long term.
No, it might work for 4 or 5 months, because of that deterioration, unless it's obvious, you know, take the staff off the floor completely. But if you, over a period, things will deteriorate, and then your employees or your customers will suddenly say, "This used to be much better than this." You know, they're not got the attention to detail. So that does come. You know, obviously that improves the need for managing and monitoring and measuring. You know, and there are so many different things coming out now that make it easier for people to or make it more, give them an audit trail to say when they did something and that it was done correctly. And through testing, you know, you mentioned in the gym and the pool there, on one of the LinkedIn posts I read the other day about, you know, unfortunately in some environments they will slosh the water out of the swimming pool to wash the pool side down, and because there's chlorine in the pool water, they think that's good enough. It's not. So, you know, but everyone needs to. So innovation is about how can we best maintain these things efficiently, not just say this is the latest idea.
No, and I think one of the challenges that the industry has had and still has is that it's very subjective, isn't it? You know, cleanliness is very subjective, whereas things like hygiene can be measured, and obviously in your fire business the amount of grease can be measured. There's a particular test for that, and in my world the slip resistance can be measured. So if you start introducing some more scientific stuff to actually say, well, look, the benchmarks, yes, it's important how things look, but actually, you know, we're going to test this over time, and we're going to make sure that we're meeting certain criteria, and then we actually can prove, you know, that the outcome that we're delivering is working, and then there's less cause for complaints or arguments or whatever it might be. And that's another way of helping the staff again to understand, well, we're doing it this way because we are going to test it and show that it works, and therefore that's what we need to do.
Yeah, well, I think you're right in terms of how to take the COVID-19 situation. if we didn't sanitise places, well, we are sanitising places, but are we actually doing it correctly? Is it achieving the result longer term that we need? I'd suggest there's not too many measures going on some of that at the moment.
Yeah.
but in time, and if you took, I think that the cleaning in the hospital environment is a minefield at the best of times. But the proof of the pudding is when practices are put in place that do reduce the level of cross-contamination, reduce the level of hospital-acquired infections. Yeah. They're the sort of measures that actually really show that the system's working. So whether that's the operatives doing their job more efficiently, the chemicals they're using being more effective, there has to be a result there. Yeah. And I think probably in the cleaning industry, if we could come up with more evidence that what we do makes a difference, then people will be prepared to pay for it.
Yeah, I believe that strongly because, you know, when I have conversations with clients, and I'm sure in your fire business it's the same, about investing in doing things better or differently to achieve a better outcome that can be measured. You know, there's always appetite to do that. There's always budget that magically becomes available to do it, but that doesn't seem to be unlockable by the day-to-day cleaning contractor without some of that evidence to go on top.
Yeah, well, you're right. Cleaning doesn't make anyone any money. That's a very bold statement, but in certain environments they'll say, well, yeah, but that's straight off my bottom line, and people can't see it. You know, that's if we're talking about extract ducting, it's generally above the ceiling. You know, out of sight, out of mind. The reality is that poorly maintained ducting is a major, you know, is a major fire hazard.
Yeah,
major fire hazard. And so, how far is anyone prepared to go before they react to the need to get it done?
Yeah.
Wait until there's a fire. Unfortunately, you know, there are places that will do that, and that's why you see situations in central London where there are there's a when they're working, no one's working at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think if you go on the London Fire Brigade website, you'll see there's quite often a kitchen fire a day, more than one in central London, and quite often that's related to just poorly maintained systems. Yeah. Whether that's because they haven't got the right fire suppression systems, but so in verify compliance, as one of the businesses I'm involved in, we actually try and give the client the assurance, and quite often the building owner, the assurance that those places are being maintained and they are fit for purpose, that they were installed correctly, they've been brought up to the latest standards. And we've started doing sort of planned and reactive maintenance for some of our clients because we're, again, very much in the front line. So we identify there's a problem and we're able to resolve it for them. So, you know, it's very important that clients do recognise what their responsibilities are, and you'll link back to the insurance companies. The insurers are out there to say, we're taking you at your word that you do what you say you're going to do, but more and more they're actually saying we want evidence. Yeah, we do want evidence now that you're doing it, and so possibly that will come into the cleaning, the actual what you might call basic, straightforward cleaning environment. If clients are getting, if insurers are getting claims of work-related injuries and work-related infections, they're going to actually come back and say, are you actually following what should be best practice? You know, why is there such a regular occurrence of these situations in your environment? So, you know, there is an opportunity for us to actually stand up and shout a little bit about what we do, rather than just sort of take it for granted that we're there, and start to get that level of recognition in both of those things. You know, what we do is important.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that would be great, and so hopefully, you know, we can encourage that going forward. One of the things, Barry, that I know you've done certainly recently is helping clients to put together specifications for cleaning contracts. So, we're going to outsource the cleaning, or we already outsource the cleaning, but we want to explore what the market can offer us and what other options there are available. Lots of the people that will be watching or listening to this will probably be business owners, and so what kind of advice would you give in terms of from a company, a client perspective? How should you be going about doing that process of looking at how cleaning's delivered and what are the things you're looking for and so on?
I think the first thing is to work with the client from the client side. Work with the client and make sure they understand what it is they want. It's if depending on the size of the company, quite often they say to somebody in procurement, go out and find me a new cleaning contractor. But rather than give them a specification for what that contractor needs to be able to do. So firstly, sit down with the client and say, right, okay, what is it we're looking to achieve here? And what is the budget you've got in place? And then quite often what I'll do is I'll actually quote it as though I'm the contractor.
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay, just keep it simple. You've got £10,000 a year you want to spend, or £100,000 a year you want to spend. I'll actually look at it and say, realistically, you can't get it for that.
Yeah.
This is what it costs. I break it right the way down. This is the amount of labour you need. This is the equipment you're going to need to put in place. These are the materials. If you're going to use the correct materials, this is what you need. This is what you need. This is what you need. Your insurance is going to cost you that. And so if you're doing it in a compliant way, that's your real cost of delivering the service that you think you want.
Yeah.
And then so you get an agreement with them to say, okay, do we look at what do we have to do about a budget? Or you say, if that's all you've got to spend, this is going to have to go and this is going to have to go. But make sure you leave the important stuff in. Yeah. So basically, you end up with the client understands that when they go out to tender, there's going to be a threshold there that they need to be targeting. So anyone that comes in way over that budgetary threshold, you need to look and say, well, what are they offering something different? Are they offering us more than we need? Equally, when you get people below that band, then you say, well, what can they realistically deliver for them? I did one recently for a large private spa out in Berkshire, and we used exactly that policy. We looked at it and gave the contractors an opportunity to come in and present and said, do you realistically think you're going to be able to employ staff in this region at that wage rate?
Yeah.
And yes. Well, we don't agree with you. Yeah, so it's that kind of thing. So, and then obviously when you're looking at it from a contractor point of view, it's making sure they fully understand what the tender document is asking them to do.
Yeah.
And that they read the small print. It's horrendous, not just in cleaning, but a lot of people, they go, oh, great, we've got an opportunity, we'll bid for this, and it's going to be fantastic. And they forget to read the small print, and then they find out that there's areas they're not allowed for.
Yeah.
And some clients will still go, well, they've met our budget, so we're going to give it to them, even though they perhaps know that they're going to be in for 6 months of pain while they try and beat the contractor up to deliver what they asked for.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I like to work with, people that have a clear understanding of what it is they need.
Yeah.
And not just say, how can we get this for less?
No, because then you're just on a spiral, a vicious circle spiraling down to the bottom, aren't you? And it's interesting because it's something that an approach I've been taking with the leisure centres, where we obviously do a lot of work right now, and saying, well, look, that sector, as I'm sure you know, generally the standards are pretty poor of cleanliness, and so they need to do a proper deep cleaning exercise, I believe, because they're going back to what we said about confidence of staff and confidence of customers. If people walk back in after the lockdown and they're grubby, they're not going to come back. So I've actually set out to quite a lot of them, well, look, this is what I think if you want to self-deliver this, I can support you in various ways, but this is what I think you need as a minimum in terms of your labour, for example. So it's not a case of you need a couple of people for a day and you're going to clean a whole leisure centre. That's just not going to happen. You need to understand what you really need to do. And so I think, that education piece is really valuable.
Yeah, and it's when is it realistic to do things? These places tend to be open because of the lifestyle that most people lead. These places are open quite often. Some of them are open 24 hours now, but in general, they're open from sort of 6 in the morning till 11 at night. And if you've got a fairly constant footfall, obviously there are certain things you cannot do. But given in wet areas, some people do take to wearing flip-flops and things like that, or overshoes when they're walking around. But in the main, if they're going from one wet area to another, they don't bother. So you've got all that kind of potential cross-contamination on floors, etc. So there has to be a deep clean taken part at some time of the day to make sure that that's maintained in that way. But then obviously, given the understanding, the footfall of the environment and the peaks and troughs, you've got to make sure you've got the staff available during those peaks. Ironically, I'm going to contradict myself here sometimes. If I go back to the airport environment, sometimes when there are just so many passengers in a particular location at any one time, you cannot clean.
No.
So it's one of those getting it about right. And so making sure that you've got your staff levels in the right place at the right time. I often liken it to Formula One. I'm not a great Formula One fan in terms of the actual racing, but you've got to say they've got it absolutely right in terms of their planning and their scheduling and their operation. When they can get a vehicle come in and be turned around with 4 new tyres and refueled and everything else, it's about everyone being in the right place at the right time to be most effective. You can actually apply that to cleaning. I know in the rail networks at one time, they used to take rolling stock off the road, off the tracks, for like weeks at a time, or certainly days at a time. And they actually did a piece of work where they actually looked at the Formula One concept and said, look, if we get all the right people in the right place with the right tools and the right parts, and I think they brought a service down from like 3 days down to 12 hours. So going back to what we said about innovation and how we do things, that's the kind of thinking that we should apply. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. We're talking about hotel rooms. Hotel rooms very quiet at the moment, but when they're busy, they're very busy. You get some hotels have 120% occupancy, and you say, well, how can that possibly happen? But of course, it does for various reasons. Whether it's people just need a room for 4 or 5 hours during the day for whatever reason. But those have to be turned around. So how do you actually make sure that that's being cleaned efficiently and safely
and effectively?
Effectively, but it needs to be done in the best possible time, productivity time. If you're going to keep rates. So when we go back and talk about innovation, about things, then have a good look at the building and say, are we actually really going about this in the right way? Are we cleaning that area too often? Are we not cleaning that area enough? So you look at how you redeploy that, and that's where you get back to working with clients, getting closer to their budget, as long as they understand exactly what they're getting. And as long as you're getting the quality. I would never go in somewhere and say, well, this is what you can have for that. But I'd rather say this is what you'll get for what you want to spend. And to be honest, Mr. Client, I'd rather not deliver it.
It's pretty brave to do that, though, isn't it?
No one ever puts a sign over the door to say, sorry, the cleaning's not as good as it used to be, but we've reduced the budget by 15%.
No. It's
so everyone goes, this contractor is poor.
They blame it on the contractor, and my experience is, that every time I've ever looked into the detail of a contract, the contractor is delivering exactly what it says they're supposed to deliver. The mismatch is in that communication piece and that teamwork piece, which you've identified really well, which is, they're not, the client and the contractor aren't working together as one team when they should be. And they haven't communicated properly between them what the outcome is supposed to be and how it's supposed to be delivered, and so there's a mismatch,
Yeah.
and it's theoretically it should
Even
be
within
paid.
their employees,
Yeah.
the board of directors or whatever, or the procurement department may renegotiate the cleaning contract and go to every other day cleaning. I mean, that was a favourite, and there is a place for that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If you think about your own home environment, you probably don't vacuum your lounge every day. So why vacuum the office every day? Depends how dirty they make it. But when people are used to having things done every day, and suddenly they go in, they find a few bits and pieces on the carpet, they get on the phone to the cleaning contractor or to the building manager and say, "Oh, my office hasn't been cleaned for days." It always gets exaggerated.
Yeah.
And that's because no one's actually informed the occupants of the building that, sorry, your office, your bin will be emptied every day, but you'll only be vacuumed every other day or whatever.
Yeah.
So communication about what's changed is vastly important as well. You can't just do it in isolation and expect everybody to accept what's going on.
Yeah.
It comes back to what you were saying a little while ago about, people coming back into their buildings need to know that they're safe to come back to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Barry, I'm conscious of time. I've kept you for a bit longer than we had agreed. So let's start wrapping up. But what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or contact you if they want to, discuss some of these topics further, or if they're interested in the livery company, or if they want to engage you to help them solve any problems or put any tenders together or whatever it might be?
Probably for all of those things, if people want to contact me on the back of this blog, everything comes back into. I've got numerous emails, so I won't bore you with all of those. But the best one for everything I'm involved in is Renaissance Group. So it's the renaissancegroup.com. There isn't a website. I've not bothered putting a website out there for years because it's mainly because Renaissance isn't spelt the way most people think it's spelt.
Right.
And it's RENASCENTE rather than the art Renaissance. So Barrie at renaissancegroup.com.
Okay. I'll put that on the screen for the video and in the on the web page if anybody's listening to this, and then they've got your details.
So they'll Renaissance Group, as I say, is involved in the consultancy. We have an interest in contract hire and leasing of vehicles, so that may be of interest to people. We're involved in air and fire, and obviously I'm very much involved in the livery. And one other thing, just on the livery very quickly, that we're doing, and it's something we'll be pushing out to the industry again, is that not just our livery company, but the livery in general in the city. We're working on a program at the moment called No Going Back, which is based around getting employment and in some cases accommodation, but most importantly mentoring for young offenders. So offenders coming out of prison, effectively, that will receive training whilst they're in prison to carry out. There's lots of different trades. So we're obviously, from the environmental cleaners point of view, we're concentrating specifically on cleaning activities. And so they will receive training and certification whilst they're in prison. And we will be looking to find employers to give them work. For some of them that have nowhere to live, the city liveries are working on having accommodation. But also importantly, mentoring for people. Someone to be able to pick the phone up in times of stress or advice, and just someone that they could talk to. Because a lot of these people are basically put out on the street after whatever term they've served with £42 in their pocket, no job, nowhere to live. Obviously, they're going to go back to their, well, not obviously, unfortunately, a lot of them do go back to their old crowd, and they end up back inside, and that's what's costing us, the taxpayer, millions and millions and millions a year. So that's an initiative that's definitely livery driven that some people might be interested in getting in touch with.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Very well done for getting involved in that one. I think that's really valuable. So great. Well, thank you. Thanks very much, Barry, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. And we will. I'll look forward to seeing you, Barry, for a coffee whenever we can. And we'll speak again to everybody soon. Thanks.
Look forward to it. Thank you very much. Bye.